Hey everyone, welcome to week 2 of The Deep. I'm so glad you're gathered together. You're engaging in group life. Hopefully you're getting a little bit messy, a little bit vulnerable with each other. That's where growth happens. That's where relationships exist. Fantastic. Now before we dive into our material for discussion, let's talk about a couple of things that are going on in the life of our church. I'm incredibly excited about these things, but not like hyped up, emotionally excited. These are deep down, very meaningful things to us as a church. At the end of this month, we're doing Ridgefest. You've heard us talk about it. One of the things that we want to do is respond to a very real need in our community to provide things for kids and families. And number 2, what we want to do is raise the awareness of our church. Unfortunately, too few people in our community even know about our church. A lot of people do, a lot of people don't. This is an opportunity to be great hosts, to welcome them onto our campus. I am deeply grateful. I'm so thankful for so many of you who volunteered to be on a team to make this event happen. I'm grateful for those of you who are volunteering to bring in candy. Keep bringing in candy every time you're at the church building between now and then. This weekend, I hope that you grabbed a handful of these, a stack of these. Next time you're here, grab some more. These are invitations for you to invite your friends, people you care about who you'd like to come. All the information is on here, so make sure you grab this. Another thing that's going on is the Freedom Campaign. I hope that you picked up one of these booklets. Maybe you downloaded it digitally. That's even better. And I'm going to invite you to participate with us in the Freedom Campaign. The last I checked, we're about 7.5% of our goal. Our goal is $370,000. That allows us to pay off our mortgage, $252,000, build a child evangelism center at the hospital in Guinea. It's about $27,000 to pay off the mortgage for one of the homes for Next Chapter Ministries. I know that ministry has a long history with Autumn Ridge. It's where I like to volunteer, and I'm trying to build relationships there. To build that, to pay off that home, it's $91,000. That's how we landed at $370,000. What I want to ask you to do is not just listen and say, it would be great to be debt-free. It'd be great to engage in acts of generosity and kindness. What I'm asking you to do is decide, how do you want to engage? This weekend, we started off the message by asking this question: what is the story that you tell yourself about yourself? And that's a great question to really help us evaluate ourselves. But one of the questions that I sometimes ask myself that's kind of a follow-up to that question is, what is the story that I want to tell? And it's my hope and prayer that more and more people will say, I want to be a part of the story of generosity. Will you think about that? Will you consider that? Would you sit down and look over your finances and look over this agenda, look over this proposal, and ask yourself, what is the story that I want to tell myself about how I engaged in this big story of generosity? I'm grateful for your participation. I'm grateful for what God has done, what I believe He's doing, and I'm just grateful in advance for what I'm convinced He wants to do in the future, in and through this church. And it's a thrill to get to do it together. All right, let's turn the page. And let's talk about our series that we're in right now, The Deep. And we're trying to go deeper in the gospel, but our big goal is this: to get the gospel to go deeper into us. Some of the things that I shared this weekend might be old news for some of us, in the sense, when you talk about identifying idols in the heart, I get you, I know exactly where you're coming from, I'm in, I want to do that. Some of us, when you hear me talk about that, you're going to say, I'm not totally sure what you mean. This feels like Christianese. It sounds like it should be a good thing, but I don't exactly know what you mean. Hopefully, this will be a little bit more clear, because this is going to be a key part of your discussion. When we talk about idols, we're talking about those things that we look to for significance, security, and satisfaction. That those are the things that if I pursue them, if I get them, they're going to give me those things in return. This is what makes me okay. This is what makes life worth living. Everybody is vulnerable to idols. That's why one theologian said, the heart is an idol-making factory. But we all have things that we turn to. The hard part sometimes is identifying exactly what that is. And so what I want to do is I want to apply some of the points of the message with a possibility, something that some of us may wrestle with. Some of us, maybe you, know what it's like to feel the need to kind of control outcomes with our kids and maybe even find ourselves getting angry. Have you ever found yourself getting angry? Not just disappointed, not just wanting better for your kids, but kind of getting angry. Well, what's going on there? How would we apply ruthlessly, engage our insecurity, refuse to sanitize our sin, relentlessly preach to ourselves? Well, if I'm going to ruthlessly engage my insecurity, I'm probably going to have to stop and recognize when things don't go the way that I want them to go, it's not because I'm disappointed for my kids, or not only because I'm disappointed for my kids. Sometimes it's because it scares me about what other people are going to think about me, or their behavior, their life choices, the outcomes in their life reflect on my own self-worth as a parent. That's insecurity. And that's insecurity because I'm not looking to Jesus to validate and anchor who I am. I'm looking to something else to validate and anchor who I am, and nothing else can do that. And that's why I feel insecure. Second thing, I'm going to refuse to sanitize my sin. When I get angry, what I'm actually doing is trying to control my kids. I'm trying to control my kids with my lack of self-control. Now, what I'm not saying is that we never get emotional. I'm not saying that the presence of anger itself is a bad thing. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is when it begins to take over and I lash out and I'm really finding that I'm trying to grab onto control, there's a story that I'm telling myself that's not a healthy story. It's a story rooted in insecurity. It's rooted in the idolatry that if I'm a good enough parent, that I'm a good enough person. Instead of turning and saying, Jesus, I trust in you. And this is where I'm going to begin to relentlessly preach to myself. I'm not investing in my kids and loving my kids and pouring into them and trying to help them get to good outcomes because I'll feel better about myself. It's because I love them. And we're all a mixed bags of motivation, aren't we? But when I remember that I am loved fully and completely by my Heavenly Father, I'm delighted in by my Heavenly Father, I'm accepted by Him and fully forgiven and seen as good enough, not because of what I do, but because of what Jesus did, I am free from the vulnerability and the insecurities that come with false idols. And now I just give to my kids and I give my best to my kids because I love them. And if they win, it has nothing to do with my value. If they lose, it has nothing to do with my value. I'm giving to them out of what Jesus has given to me. If this feels like a new concept, I totally get it. I'm inviting you to begin to take your first steps down this road of understanding that we all have idol issues. And every time we experience insecurity, it's always connected to an idol issue in our life. And the response is not behave better. The response is not a rule. The response is the good news of the gospel. So I'm going to ruthlessly engage my insecurity. I'm going to refuse to sanitize my sin. And I'm going to relentlessly preach the gospel to myself. I hope you get to experiment with this together today in your group. And I hope you have a fantastic conversation. We'll see you next week.